Emily made a decision to take off her panties and bra and stay only in her see-through pajamas when she returns to the room. Hey everyone, this story is true, and to protect the people involved, the names will be changed. But I promise to be as true to the original story as possible. Oh, and before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a like and a comment. Emily always had a comfortable life. An only child, she grew up without any major worries, surrounded by her mother's love and the constant presence of David, her stepfather. With the family's financial stability, her daily life revolved around the gym in the morning, lazy afternoons by the pool, and frequent outings with her friends. Without the pressure of working or making tough decisions, she enjoyed every moment without much worry about the future. But this peace wouldn't last forever. One night, during dinner, David and her mother exchanged glances before bringing up the subject. Her voice came first, sweet but firm. "Emily, have you thought about what you want to do now that you've finished school?" The question hung in the air for a few seconds. She knew that moment would come, but she never felt pressured to decide. Still, she smiled and answered without hesitation. Maybe law or dentistry. The choice seemed to please both of them. David smiled approvingly while her mother nodded. It didn't matter which path she chose, as long as she took a step forward. To mark this new moment and encourage Emily, they decided to give her a special gift. A trip. And not just any trip. They were going to Argentina, more precisely Bariloche, a destination covered in snow and full of new experiences for her. The cold, the culture, the landscapes. Emily had never left the country, and the idea of an international trip made her heart race. It was the perfect gift, a symbol of change, of a new cycle. Emily could hardly believe it when David confirmed the trip. Argentina, Bariloche, was a setting she had only seen in movies. While her mother reviewed the ticket details, David was already organizing the itinerary, making sure every moment would be unforgettable. But there was an unexpected detail. Her mother couldn't go. Work demanded her presence, leaving only Emily and David on this adventure. At first, the idea seemed strange, but soon she got carried away with the excitement of traveling to another country for the first time. New York Airport was crowded, and adrenaline pulsed through Emily with each step of the boarding process. Sitting next to David on the plane, she felt a mix of anxiety and anticipation. He, always calm, gave her a playful look when he noticed her restlessness. "It's going to be a unique experience, Emily," he said, toasting with a glass of wine while she opted for orange juice. She laughed, feeling that this was just the beginning of something much bigger. Upon landing in Bariloche, the biting cold was the first surprise. Emily huddled inside the thin coat she had brought, feeling her skin crawl as she stepped onto Argentinian soil. The city lights reflected on the snow accumulated on the sidewalks, creating an almost magical scene. David called a taxi, and during the ride to the hotel, the two observed the landscape, commenting on the places they would explore in the coming days. Everything seemed so different from the United States, and this sense of novelty made her feel electric. As soon as they arrived at the hotel and left their bags in the room, they decided to go shopping. Emily needed more suitable clothes for the intense cold, so David took her to a store specializing in winter wear. While she tried on heavy coats and lined boots, he watched her with a look of approval. "Now you'll survive the cold," he joked. Emily laughed, feeling a strange familiarity in that moment. Strolling through the stores, they tried on coats, boots, and gloves, while the mood between them remained light and relaxed. Emily loved that kind of attention. David helped her choose, complimented her style, and even joked about how, even in the cold of Bariloche, she would manage to stand out. But when he stepped away a bit and started looking at more delicate women's clothing, something inside her awakened. He was holding pajama sets and sleepwear, soft pieces, some with thin fabrics that seemed to glide through his fingers. "I want to get some things for your mother. Can you try them on so I can get an idea of how they look?" he suggested, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Emily blinked, surprised. She had never seen him interested in that kind of detail before. For a moment she hesitated. Her body was nothing like her mother's. Her years at the gym had sculpted more defined curves, firm legs, a perfect fit inside any tight-fitting piece. Still, she took the clothes and went to the fitting room. When she put on the first set, she felt the fabric hug her skin in an almost indecent way. The mirror reflected something different than what she expected. The way the clothes fit her body seemed to draw out every detail, making it impossible to ignore the effect. Emily felt a strange warmth rise in her chest. She took a deep breath, biting her lip before finally leaving the fitting room. She took a hesitant step out, crossing her arms over her waist as if trying to hide something invisible. When she looked up, she met David's eyes slowly scanning her, a silent analysis that made her skin crawl. David asked, in a tone that seemed more serious than usual, "Is it comfortable?" Emily moistened her lips, feeling her heart race a little more than it should. His gaze lingered on her for a moment longer than necessary before looking away. And in that moment, something hung in the air, a subtle, unspoken tension that she didn't know whether to decipher or ignore. The night's cold cut like a blade when they returned to the hotel, and Emily shivered under the icy touch of the wind. David noticed and, without hesitation, made the invitation in a casual tone, but loaded with something more. "It's too cold to sleep alone. Why don't you stay in my room tonight?" She blinked, surprised, and the memory of that look earlier came back to her mind, intense, as if he had seen something in her that he had never noticed before. What was once just routine now seemed loaded with hidden meanings. Her gut said to hesitate, but the cold and exhaustion won. "If you're sure," she murmured, avoiding his gaze. The room was warm and cozy, but the atmosphere felt different from all the other nights on the trip. Emily placed her suitcase next to the bed while David picked up a small bag from the armchair. "I bought one more thing for you," he said, handing it to her with an enigmatic look. She furrowed her brow, taking the package and feeling an incredibly soft fabric against her fingers. As she pulled out the garment, her heart skipped a beat. It wasn't just pajamas. The thin, delicate fabric slipped through her fingers, revealing a drape that would mold every curve with a provocative softness. The cut was subtly daring, something that made her face warm without her knowing exactly why. "I think it suits you," David said, his voice low, watching her reaction in a way that sent a shiver down her spine. The air seemed thicker in the room, as if an invisible thread was pulling them closer, reducing the distance of something that had never even been considered before. Emily swallowed hard and slowly turned, heading to the bathroom with the garment in hand. The door closed behind her, but the heat under her skin didn't lessen. In the mirror, her reflection stared back at her, eyes filled with a doubt she had never felt before. The soft fabric in her fingers felt like a silent invitation. Her breath came short and shaky. It was just pajamas. In the bathroom, Emily put on the pajamas. The soft fabric felt nice against her skin, but a strange, uncomfortable feeling began to grow inside her. The material was delicate and see-through, showing more than she wanted. When she looked at herself in the mirror, a wave of shame washed over her. She had never felt so vulnerable before, as if the pajamas had the power to reveal something deep and secret. Her breath became short, and the heat quickly rose to her face. For a moment she thought about turning back, but a growing curiosity made her decide to leave the bathroom and face David's gaze. When the door opened, David was waiting for her, his eyes immediately fixed on her. He seemed surprised for a moment, as if words were lost, and his eyes scanned her from head to toe with an intensity that made her hold her breath. Emily, with a nervous smile, looked at him and, trying to break the tension in the air, asked, "So, what do you think?" David looked at her for a moment, his eyes full of something undefined, before responding with a subtle smile that said more than words could express. "You look stunning." The way he looked at her, without looking away, made Emily feel more exposed than she ever imagined, as if every inch of her skin was being read and appreciated. She didn't know exactly what was happening between them, but the atmosphere in the room had changed. Something was in the air, a tension that only intensified. and she didn't know whether she wanted to run away or surrender to this new feeling. As Emily stood in the center of the room, something inside her began to change. She felt a strange mix of emotions, a whirlwind she never imagined experiencing. Reason still tried to assert itself, telling her that all of this was wrong, that he was her stepfather, and that these feelings didn't make sense. But looking at David, her mind spiraled out of control. He was there, strong and imposing, with a look that made her feel small and at the same time intensely present. The way he looked at her now was no longer just fatherly, but charged with an intensity she didn't know how to handle. Heat started to take over her body. She felt the temperature rising, but it wasn't just from the heater. It was something spreading slowly, like a gentle fire consuming every part of her being. It's wrong, she thought, trying to convince herself, but at the same time, her body seemed to be reacting in a completely different way. Something in her wanted to give in to that new feeling, an impulse she couldn't explain, but which drew her in irresistibly. Confusion filled her mind, and she felt the battle between what was right and what was starting to happen inside her. On a sudden impulse, she turned to go to the bathroom, but as she passed near the table, she made a point of bumping into it, knocking some things over, and for a moment, everything went silent. Emily bent down, sticking her backside out, showing her red underwear through her see-through pajamas, trying to pick things up in a slower movement, almost as if she wanted to draw out the moment. She could feel David's eyes on her, the tension in the air that seemed to grow stronger with each gesture. Emily looked at David with a mischievous smile, trying to break the tension, but there was something in his gaze that kept her from feeling indifferent. Emily, VO. "Oops, I'm so clumsy," she said, her voice soft and full of charm, crouched down with her backside up as she picked up the objects she had dropped. But as she did so, she felt the intensity of his gaze on her. David didn't move, nor did he answer. He just watched her with a serious expression, as if he was deep in his own thoughts. Emily smiled to herself, feeling the warmth rise through her body. He was there, so close, and his silence only increased the curiosity she felt. She got up, looking away from him, but there was something instinctive in her movements. As she walked to the bathroom, her thoughts were jumbled, trying to understand the tension surrounding them. Emily, VO. "I'm going to change and I'll be right back," she said, with a slightly provocative tone. In the bathroom, Emily carefully chose what to wear. The dress fit comfortably and outlined her body, and she caught herself taking one last look in the mirror, feeling more at ease with herself. When she returned to the room, she saw that David was wrapped in a towel, waiting. He watched her intently, as if he couldn't take his eyes off her. "David, VO. I'm going to take a shower," he finally said with a calm tone, but there was something in the way he spoke that revealed how aware he was of her presence. Emily just smiled, lying down on the bed as she waited, and to her surprise, as David got ready to go to the bathroom, he let the towel drop. His manhood was huge. Emily couldn't take her eyes off him. He walked slowly to the bathroom and said, "David, VO. I know how to tease too."
After dinner at the hotel restaurant, Emily and David returned to their room. The atmosphere was thick, as if what had happened earlier was still floating in the air between them, unsaid but present. Emily was lost in her own thoughts and feelings, her mind filled with images of David's gaze and what he had made her feel. Dinner had been a formality, a pause she almost wished she hadn't taken. What mattered now were the feelings she could no longer control. She wondered where this would take her. When they reached their room, Emily, almost without thinking, said she was going to the bathroom. It was as if her body knew what it wanted to do before her mind even decided. In the bathroom, she reached for the pajamas David had bought for her, her fingers hesitating only for a second before changing. The light fabric glided over her skin, causing a sensation she couldn't ignore. Each touch of the pajamas seemed to amplify what she was feeling, and for a moment, she lost herself in the idea of how they made her feel. Heat rose across her skin as she thought about what was to come. There was no longer any doubt in her mind. She was in for it. So she made a decision: take off her panties and bra, and stay only in transparent pajamas. When she returns to the room, David was already lying down, and when he looked at Emily showing her headlights on, he almost jumped. And when she lay down on the bed, turning her back to David, she felt that he was only in silk boxer shorts, very thin, and with his rigid member he was touching Emily's trunk, who let out a low moan. David began to brush Emily's canvas over her clothes, and when he took his hand, it looked like a waterfall. At that moment nothing else mattered. Emily turns around kissing David, and goes under the covers to play a flute. David could only breathe and enjoy the music played by Emily. After about 5 minutes, David says, "Calm down, come back here, I don't want to pop the champagne yet. I want more." Emily climbs on top of David to finish the job, but David quickly turns her over, firmly holding her hair and saying, "I'm in charge," and with great force he uses his sledgehammer to hammer deep. Emily releases her glitter and tells David, "Where do you want to end it?" Without thinking twice, he opts to go through the back door. Emily hesitates at first, but she can't think straight anymore, and she feels uncomfortable for the first 15 seconds, and then she feels something she had never felt before. She doesn't want to stop anymore, and the second time she releases the glitter, David can't take it anymore and ends up throwing everything out the back door. If you like this kind of stories, be sure to subscribe to the channel, like and leave a comment if you've ever been through something similar, and don't forget to watch our latest video about the cousin who went to visit her cousin's room at night.